Coming up on The World Today, Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is out of coma, so says his doctors, and improving. The doctors of the Charité hospital in Berlin are reporting. India overtakes Brazil to become second with coronavirus cases in the world. Plus, authorities trace cause of one of the wildfires raging in California to a gender reveal party. A warm welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I am Amarachi Ubani. Welcome to the program. So we begin today with doctors of the Charité hospital in Berlin saying that the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is now out of an induced coma. His condition has also improved. They say he's being weaned off mechanical ventilation. The 44-year-old is reportedly responding to verbal stimuli. Last week, doctors identified a Novichok nerve agent was used to poison Navalny, who had been flown to Germany for treatment. His team says it was poisoned on orders from President Vladimir Putin, who denies all the allegations. European leaders, however, are mounting pressure on the German Chancellor Angela Merkel to take a tougher stance over the incident. Last week, she said Navalny was a victim of attempted murder. The world will look to Russia for answers. The Kremlin says it is absurd to blame Russia for Navalny's poisoning and that allegations that Novichok was used to poison the opposition leader was not backed by evidence. The rising number of COVID-19 cases in India continues to worry authorities as the country is reported more than 90,000 cases on Sunday, bringing it up to the only country after the United States in the number of global COVID-19 infections. Meanwhile, lockdown measures continue to be eased or reimposed as countries continue to deal with cases. Here's a global update.
As the number of cases continue to grow in India, doctors say hospitals are struggling to cope with fatigue, exhaustion and manpower after nearly 6 months of relentless case increases. The total number of infections in the country have now passed 4.2 million, overtaking Brazil as a country with the second highest number of coronavirus infections globally. However, the metro in the capital, Delhi, has reopened more than 5 months after it was shut down to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Masks, social distancing and temperature checks are mandatory, according to new rules released. The Israeli government has announced overnight curfews in what it calls red cities and towns with the highest COVID-19 infection rates after the country's death toll from coronavirus passed 1,000. The curfews begin today. Non-essential businesses are compelled to close during the curfews, while schools remain closed at all times. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, says the decision was well considered, responsible and committed to reality. Spain is set to surpass 500,000 COVID-19 cases as teachers across the country prepare to reopen schools despite rising concern over coronavirus figures in the country and doubts about the prevention protocols in place. However, school attendance is mandatory, as is wearing face masks in class for children aged 6 and over. Students must wash their hands at least 5 times a day and social distancing must be observed. Over in the United States, the total number of COVID-19 cases surpassed 6.27 million on Sunday, according to the Center for Systems Science and Engineering at Johns Hopkins University. The national case count rose to 6.27 million, with the death toll in the country reaching 188,909 as of 11:28 p.m. on Sunday. Finally, China's National Biotech Group has found 2 more countries to run late-stage clinical tests of coronavirus vaccine candidates. Serbia will test 2 vaccines developed by CNBG's Wuhan and Beijing units, and Pakistan will test the Beijing's Unite candidate. CNBG says Phase 3 trials are expected to involve 50,000 people in about 10 countries, including the UAE, Bahrain, Peru and Argentina. Phase 3 trials usually require thousands of people to verify safety and effectiveness of vaccines.
In Belarus, one of the country's leading opposition figures, Maria Kolesnikova, is said to have been bundled into a bus earlier today and driven away. She was one of 3 women who joined forces to challenge incumbent President Alexander Lukashenko in the presidential election in August. She was a member of the Coordination Council set up by the opposition to ensure a transfer of power. Government authorities have launched a criminal case against opposition leaders, saying the creation and activity of the Coordination Council are aimed at seizing of state power and at harming national security. Police are yet to comment on her disappearance. Kolesnikova's arrest follows a further demonstration on Sunday, a key day for street demonstrations in Belarus since the rallies began. Police reportedly detained as many as 633 people during the protests. Authorities have launched a crackdown on mass demonstrations against President Lukashenko that erupted after the August 9 election. His opponents say the polls were rigged. Lukashenko has been in power since 1994. Buoyed by a show of support from traditional ally Russia, he has rejected calls for new elections from Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya and other main opponents. Now in Britain, police say they have arrested a man on suspicion of murder after a series of stabbings that occurred in the early hours of Sunday morning in the city of Birmingham that left 1 person dead and 7 others injured. The 27-year-old suspect was detained in Selly Oak area of the city at 4 a.m. Detectives said these stabbings, which took place in 4 locations over 2 hours, were linked but appear to be random and were not thought to be gang-related or connected to terrorism. Birmingham Police Commander Chief Superintendent Steve Graham said the investigation was continuing and has appealed for witnesses.
Around about 2 o'clock Sunday morning, I was woken up by sirens and blue lights flashing through the window. I didn't hear what went on before that. I looked out the window and saw the street was full of ambulances and police and that. Looked through the bedroom windows and I said to my husband, I'm going to have a look, it looks dreadful. And I came out. To my left, I could see him working on a young man, trying to resuscitate him. In front of me there was a guy on the floor. I can't remember if he was on a stretcher or just on the floor, and he was covered in blood. There were some people across the street, so I crossed over and said, what's going on? And they were as shocked as I was.
The European Commission says it is determined to quickly reach a deal with Britain on a future economic and trade relationship, but underlined it would have to ensure fair competition. Spokesman for the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, Daniel Ferre, says a no-deal Brexit will inevitably create barriers to trade and cross-border exchanges that do not exist today. Noted the EU wants a future relationship agreement to ensure fair competition.
We are fully concentrated on making the most out of this week's negotiating round and out of negotiating rounds that will follow. We share Prime Minister Johnson's desire to reach a deal quickly. We will do everything in our power to reach an agreement which should be in line with the EU's long-term economic and political interests. Whether or not there is an agreement in place by the end of the year, the UK's decision to leave the single market and the customs union will inevitably create barriers to trade and cross-border exchanges that do not exist today. That's why we've been informing national administrations and European businesses about the necessary readiness measures that they need to take. I would finally point out that while we are determined to reach an agreement with the UK, the EU will be ready, in the event of a no-deal scenario, to trade with the UK on WTO terms as of the 1st of January 2021.
So there's a lot of talk in the EU about a new relationship from 2021 between estranged allies, plunged into a fresh crisis today. Britain is warning the EU it could effectively override the divorce deal that is signed earlier unless the bloc agrees to a free trade deal by October 15. Now, this could potentially jeopardize the whole treaty and create frictions in British-ruled Northern Ireland, where special arrangements have been made to avoid a hard border with Ireland to the south that could be detrimental to a peace agreement. Let's talk some more about this now. Mr. Dayo Fadino joins us now. He is in London. Mr. Dayo, thank you for joining us on the program. Has the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson run out of options concerning Brexit? Or is it just being pushed into a corner, which is why he's lashing out at the EU this way with an ultimatum of reaching a deal by October 15?
Good afternoon, Amarachi. In my opinion, I do not think Boris Johnson has run out of options at all. The Prime Minister has run out of options at all. I think what he's simply doing at this point is wanting to cause maximum damage by, stirring the honestness really to the maximum to create so much confusion, and so much convulsion to do with the negotiations and to do with the already negotiated withdrawal agreements. I mean, any Prime Minister or any government worth its onions would not, in the slightest, want to breach an agreement that was, signed and sealed so many months ago. By you now pronouncing to the whole world that you are truly and really thinking of, passing laws through Parliament to override an agreement. No sensible person worth his onions as a leader or as a government should be doing this. I mean, after all, nobody actually pointed a gun to our Prime Minister's head to sign that very particular withdrawal agreement in January, nor was the Parliament in any shape or form put under duress to ratify this very particular agreement. So no, he's not run out of options. I think all he's just doing is playing some silly games, I would say, with the EU, which I don't think is right at this point in time. I believe every single agreement, negotiated should be honoured, and every single time of that agreement should be honoured. And there are always ways of actually brokering an agreement, to come to a reasonable conclusion, and not threatening the EU that you intend to actually pass a law through Parliament if an agreement is not reached in December 2020.
I think this is something that Mr. Michel Barnier may have warned about. He said, a few months back, he said it's been difficult trying to negotiate Brexit with Britain, and there might be no Brexit eventually if Britain continues like this. But if a deal is not reached, then Britain does stand a chance of trading with the EU, just like Australia is. But is that where Britain is headed?
Well, I hope not. I hope Britain is not heading that way. And I'm saying this for one simple reason. When we look at Australia is only about, I think, 24 or 25 million people. The EU, taking away Britain, we have a population of well over about 350 million. We should also take on board the fact that over the last 47, 48 years, the UK has been intertwined with the EU, politically, economically, culturally, legally, constitutionally. And there's so much to be gained from, brokering a deal with the EU at this point in time, because there's so much to still be gained by trading with the EU and not leaving the EU without any trade deal at all in December 2020. It stands to reason that should be the proper way forward, and it beggars believe that the British government should still be playing politics with the situation to do with the EU. Yes, of course, they have to leave. That right to a sovereign state would always be there, but I believe something should be put together, to broker a very, very proper deal
Indeed, Mr.
December this year.
Yeah, and we're quickly running towards the end of the year. Mr. Dayo Fadino, thank you again for speaking with us on The World Today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Stay with us on The World Today. Still ahead. Well, some of Paris's most loved businesses are feeling the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is frustrating to a lot of them. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Charlie Hebdo journalists are not backing down as they say the republishing of pictures that led to an attack in their office in Paris and a Jewish supermarket in 2015 showed that their Islamist gunmen had not changed them. Well, some things have changed, though. The editorial meeting today took place at a secret location with police officers standing guard at the entrance of the magazine's new bunker-like office and staff being shadowed by bodyguards. 12 people were killed when two Islamist radical brothers stormed the magazine's offices, and on January 7, 2015, Charlie Hebdo had published caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad years earlier, and radical Islamists had warned online the magazine will be made to pay. The gunmen are dead, but a Paris court this month is trying 14 of those accused of being their accomplices. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange today appeared in a London court for an extradition hearing after months of delay due to the coronavirus lockdown. Assange is seeking to avoid extradition to the United States to face criminal charges over the activities of his WikiLeaks website. The US authorities accuse the Australian-born Assange of conspiring to hack government computers and of violating an espionage law in connection with the release of confidential cables by WikiLeaks in 2010 up until 2011. During today's hearing, Assange formally declined to be extradited to face a superseding indictment issued by US authorities in June.
His circumstances are dire. This is the 11th year of arbitrary detention of Julian Assange, a Niagara of insults, malice, smearing has descended upon Julian, which is being now corrected by your attention, by the attention of the press. Well, it's an abuse trial. It's just an abuse. Also, it's extraterritorial application of laws. Also, the First Amendment. Julian is a publisher, a publication is WikiLeaks, and a journalist. It's an oppression of journalism and free press everywhere in the Western world. It can't go on. It has to stop now.
And those wildfires are still raging in California, and authorities have identified one of the causes. A gender reveal party, they say, a smoke-generating pyrotechnic device at the event sparked the one in El Dorado, which has now spread over 7,000 acres. California is currently experiencing a record heat wave, with Los Angeles reporting its highest ever temperature of 49.4 degrees Celsius. The National Weather Service described Sunday as one of the hottest days since weather records began across much of southwestern California. The largest blaze, known as the Creek Fire, has burned more than 73,000 acres, and authorities say none of it has been contained. Gender reveal parties of celebrations are now saying whether expecting parents are going to have a girl or a boy. In recent years, though, several large-scale parties have gone wrong, even resulting in the death of a woman in 2019. Here in Africa, residents in and around the Senegalese capital, Dakar, have been clearing up debris and mud since Sunday, September 6th, after heavy rain caused severe flooding across the country. Homes were damaged and furniture covered in mud in many residential areas on the outskirts of Dakar and nearby Gadawe. Volunteers were removing water from a heavily flooded health center serving 6 local communities. The president, Macky Sall, has activated an emergency aid plan, and Water Minister Serine Mbaye Thiam says more rain fell on a single day than the country would usually see during 3 months in the rainy season. According to forecasters, more thunderstorms and rains are expected on Sunday. Were expected on Sunday across most of the country. Well, South Koreans are hunkered down as Typhoon Haishen rolls northwards along the country's east coast, just a day after the powerful storm battered Japan's southern islands, where 4 people are missing following a landslide. The wild weather uprooted trees and caused landslides near apartment buildings in Goje Island off the southeastern tip of the peninsula. The storm, packing winds of up to 112 kilometers per hour, temporarily cut power to more than 75,000 households and displaced some 3,100 people in South Korea after making landfall on the southeastern tip of the peninsula. At least 2 people have died, 2 more still missing, 5 others were injured, most of them in the southern regions hit by the floods. President Muhammadu Buhari has appealed to ECOWAS leaders not to elongate their tenure in office beyond constitutional limits. The president made the call while presenting Nigeria's general statement at the 57th ordinary session of the ECOWAS heads of state and government in Niamey, the Niger Republic capital, today. He's also asked colleagues to respect constitutional provisions and ensure free and fair elections. President Buhari says it is important that as leaders of our individual member states of ECOWAS, we need to adhere to the constitutional provisions of our countries, particularly on term limits. This is one area that generates crisis and potential tension in our sub-region. As it is, the challenges facing the sub-region are enormous, from socio-economic matters to security issues. The ECOWAS sub-region could not therefore afford another political crisis in the guise of tenure elongation. He commended leaders who have resisted such temptations, saying they will be deemed exceptional role models in their respective countries and the sub-region as a whole. And as we end the world today, since it starts as a grocery pushcart, the Fauchon Delicatessen has been the safe spot in central Paris for 134 years, where it was buffeted by 2 world wars, countless mass demonstrations, strikes and riots. Now Fauchon is grappling with the coronavirus pandemic, which has robbed Paris of most of its tourism trade. Famous for its eclairs, foie gras, truffles and fine wines, Fauchon Paris shops, located in Place de la Madeleine, counts usually 70% of foreign customers, but now that number has greatly reduced. In June, the restaurant put its 2 flagship stores on Place de la Madeleine into receivership and submitted a restructuring plan to court, which will rule by September 15. Fauchon Paris has warned its 107 staff at La Madeleine that there will be job cuts, and it is negotiating redundancy terms with unions, but it's not all gloom and doom. Fauchon says even if its food outlets will likely move, its luxury hotel is doing well and will stay at La Madeleine. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.